Welcome into K-State Online. I am Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway. We start off this Christmas week as it's in full force, talking about K-State's big haul out of the transfer portal over the weekend. There's been a lot of talk about what K-State was going to do, how things were kind of looking, and we finally started to see things really pick up in a big way. Really, it started Friday afternoon, and it's carried all the way through the weekend where K-State has now picked up 4 commitments. And I guess math, not going to care too much about it, but like a 72-hour stretch. And that's giving yourself some grace on the math. Like it was maybe an even tighter window than that. So K-State starting to turn the corner here, up to 6 commitments in the portal class. And before we dive into any of the individuals in this, what do you think of where K-State sits now as we have 5 days until the transfer portal window closes, which again, reminder on that's just for people to enter. So K-State will still be working the transfer market, I would imagine, as many others will, after the 28th. That just means that once you hit the 28th, your roster is safe. You don't have to worry about some of these other fringe guys that you thought might go into the portal. They are going to be here at least through the spring when another window opens up.
Yeah, I think that where K-State sits right now is kind of a bit of a mixed bag. I like a lot of the pieces that they've added. There are some positions that it doesn't feel great that they haven't added anybody there yet. I don't want to say that it's inexcusable because there are just lots of things that go into how the transfer portal recruiting works. But you'd feel a lot better if you had more than one corner right now. And the one corner that you have is relatively unproven with Jaden Rowe. You'd probably feel a little bit better if you had another offensive lineman. But I like that the start that they've had there. So there are spots where I think that they have done really, really well. And getting Marquavius Moss is one. Getting Amos is another. I even think that Gabe Powers can be a guy that's really, really good too. You also look at this as you still probably need at least one starting caliber corner. And for the most part, you haven't even been able to get guys to come into Manhattan yet at the corner position. And that's kind of where the black eye is right now for me.
Yeah, that is a good point because we look at what they've done. Obviously, that was the first place they struck was corner with Jaden Rowe, but that's one of those where you go, hasn't seen the field a ton at Oklahoma. Like this is where you're taking a kind of a gamble, which you and I are both of the agreement. We like that strategy for K-State, but it just kind of comes down to you also have to supplement that with guys that also already have some production to back it up, or you kind of know what role they're going to fit squarely into. And we'll talk about a number of these guys and how they kind of work into that because we talked last week about Jerand Tibbs. That's a guy that comes in that I think you look at the numbers. There's already production there for Jerand Tibbs that you say, we feel comfortable in knowing that, I mean, the floor for Tibbs at K-State right now feels like probably wide receiver 3. You think that's fair to say? And then the ceiling, I don't know that it's him outdoing Jace Brown next year, but it's being a better version of what Keegan Johnson was this year, where he's more noticeable throughout a majority of the games. Where I still think Keegan Johnson had a solid season for K-State and did a lot more than what some would think because they kind of want to project the previous year onto him a little bit, but there was still another gear that I think you were kind of waiting and hoping that Keegan Johnson would get to, and he never did in his 2 seasons at K-State. I think the thought would be Jerand Tibbs is a similar type player, but I think his floor might be even higher than Keegan Johnson's, and we'll see how that ends up playing out. But we'll talk about the guys that we haven't gotten to yet because we talked Tibbs last week. We had the Marquavius Moss video go up as soon as it was available, and as long as everything goes well, everybody will be getting a sit down with Marquavius Moss later in the week. I think we'll throw that one out there on Christmas because DY and I will have the preview show up on Christmas Eve for everybody. But we did those. Now we've got 3 new players to talk about that have transferred to K-State, getting them up to 6. in this cycle. And let's start with the first one of the three. We'll just go in chronological order here. And this is one that it started to get to the point where this might be the guy, and I think everybody has this, where during a portal cycle, for whatever irrational reason, you go, I really want this guy. I will melt down personally if they don't get him. And Gabe Powers kind of became that guy for me, the linebacker from Ohio State, because again, the production hasn't totally been there. He hasn't seen the field as much as you would like, but he comes from Ohio State. We talked a little bit about it last week, and it was mentioning, look, I think Ohio State thinks that he's a good enough player. He's just not to the standard of what Ohio State has to put on the field at linebacker. But it seems like the kind of guy that could possibly thrive at K-State. And we know that there's a window of opportunity here for some linebacker playing time for K-State. So how do you see Gabe Powers here? Because he kind of falls into the Jaden Rowe boat of big-time recruit out of high school, went to a powerhouse, didn't necessarily produce how you wanted, and now it's second chance time to kind of reach that potential.
Yeah, and even with Gabe Powers, I think that the ceiling is even higher than Jaden Rowe because, I mean, we talked about where Jaden Rowe is ranked out of high school. Gabe Powers is almost a top 100 recruit across the board out of high school. So you see that and you think, okay, his ceiling is insanely high. And I don't even know if it was just him not being able to up to the standard at Ohio State as much as he's just blocked at Ohio State. I mean, he's only about to be a junior in college, heading to K-State. And younger guys at Ohio State typically don't see the field a ton. And we've seen that throughout the last probably 4, 5, 6 years at Ohio State. I mean, I remember talking with some of my family when we were watching the playoff game that Ohio State played and just saying like Marvin Harrison Jr. barely played his first season at Ohio State. So Gabe Powers did see the field a little bit this year. And I think that there are times where you like with guys that haven't played a lot, you kind of think to yourself, okay, what did his previous school think of him? I think that Powers is a guy that Ohio State probably wanted to keep because he was starting to see the field a little bit more. He's an Ohio guy, and I think will be a very steady presence in the locker room as well. And I think that if he hits the ground running, there's no reason that he couldn't be the starting will linebacker at K-State next year because it's a spot where there's kind of a lot of unproven. Right now, it's kind of the spot on defense that outside of corner that's like, who is going to step up and play that position? And right now, I think that Gabe Powers is probably the leader in the clubhouse to play at that will spot because you've had Asa Newsom coming off of 2 knee injuries. I don't know if Rex Van Wy is quite there yet. And then other than that, it's a lot of freshmen and even or freshmen that redshirted this year, or you have 5 true freshman linebackers coming in. So I think that you kind of look at that as like, okay, Gabe Powers can play that spot. Now you still probably need at least one more linebacker though.
Yeah, and I think that's going to kind of be a common theme with the positions that we talk about with K-State in the portal. Okay, you got a guy here, you got a guy there. Need one more like that. But I think the Gabe Powers one, I like the potential that's there. The fact that, like you're saying, it's tough for younger guys to see the field at Ohio State like this, especially, those positions like linebacker can tend to be a lot more, upperclassman heavy. Like Austin Romaine is kind of the outlier at K-State. You think,
yeah,
and you probably think, well, Austin Moore played for a long time at K-State. He did, but it's because of extra eligibility to where, I mean, he was already listed as a junior by the time he was actually playing in 2022 as a significant role in everything. So I think it's good to know, and I do like this opportunity. And again, look at this. He was the number 11 ranked transfer linebacker in the class. A guy that we talked about early on in the process when he entered the portal was Jacob Manu, the linebacker from Arizona who committed to Washington. I don't think K-State ever had any serious conversations there, but that was one that when he goes in, you go, man, that seems like a kind of guy that you would like. It's a linebacker with a name that people know, played at Arizona, and yeah, they were bad this year, but the previous they were pretty good. And Gabe Powers, who only appeared in 6 games this season for Ohio State, ends up being in a position where he's thought of higher than Manu. So I think there's still a lot of hope by the people that evaluate this stuff and what Powers can do. And yeah, blocked at Ohio State, maybe not necessarily up to the level that Ohio State needs to go and win a national championship, but certainly a guy that you think could thrive at K-State and possibly show some of that excitement that Ohio State thought they were getting when they recruited him out of high school. So I'm looking forward to Gabe Powers and seeing how that kind of starts to figure out. All right, moving on. We talked about Jerand Tibbs. He was the first wide receiver addition in this class. Now the Cats have added a player that is reuniting with Matt Wells after they spent a year together. It's more size at this position too. Tibbs was 6'3". Jerand Bradley is 6'5". And he's got 1 year left. He started at Texas Tech, transferred to Boston College. What do you think the role ends up being here for Bradley?
I think that there is a world where Jerand Bradley can be extremely successful as like a back shoulder throw, go up and grab it. I like to call it going up for a rebound kind of receiver where he just goes and uses that size and athleticism to go get it. But he's probably not the receiver too that you want. Like I think that I like Tibbs a little bit more. Like we talked yesterday or 2 days ago when Bradley ended up committing. Probably feel better if this was last season when Bradley would have been brought in because of just the steady drop in production at Boston College. But kind of like Tibbs, Boston College was way better than Purdue. Like there's no question there. But Boston College's quarterback situation was kind of a disaster. And then I believe that Bradley was brought in before Bill O'Brien was even was hired. So I kind of wonder what kind of went into that as well. But Jerand Bradley was extremely productive at Texas Tech in 2022, and it was still really solid in 2023. So you have that power forward production being there. And it's another guy that, like you said, is just a bigger receiver. K-State hasn't really had those in the past. And to see what he can do, I think it is exciting because he's reuniting with Matt Wells. And I think that unlike what happened with Dante Cephas reuniting with Matthew Middleton, Wells did this in the Big 12, or Wells and Bradley did this in the Big 12 already. So I think that is there. And I'm just very intrigued because Bradley has some insanely good catches if you look back at his Texas Tech time. The production at Boston College obviously wasn't there, but Bradley had one of the better catches that we've seen for a K-State opposing player when K-State went there last season.
Oh yeah, I guess I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, that's a good point.
Went up and got it over Jacob Parrish, I believe.
Yeah, just as not on topic here, is this? Do you feel like K-State has more receivers make how do they do that plays against them than any other team you watch? And also then the fact that it doesn't seem like K-State ever gets that to go their way.
It definitely feels like that. And I mean, I was reminded of it when I watched Bradley's Texas Tech highlights of like, oh, that was also against K-State.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think of that with just all the random receivers that have ended up in the NFL that K-State's faced from, smaller schools. Or you think like even, 2020, the COVID year, Arkansas State had just some insane catches in that game. The following year, you end up in a spot where Romeo Doubs is playing for Nevada, and now he's, one of the most successful receivers in his draft class with the Packers. And you just kind of keep going down the list and you think about all these guys and they're making plays. Or even, last year K-State opens the season against SEMO. Ryan Flournoy is playing for the Dallas Cowboys right now. He was the number one receiver on that SEMO team. It's like, man, find some less talented, bad teams to play in the non-conference. I have always had that criticism about K-State football over the last probably, 6-7 years now. You look at the football schedule and you're like, man, the SEC finds the teams that go 2-10 in FCS. Why are you playing the top 3 favorite to go win the FCS national championship this year? Take it easy. So that's just me. Can we get some more UMasses on the schedule and less Arkansas States or Nevada with an NFL prospect quarterback and NFL prospect receiver? But it is what it is. All right, so that is Bradley, who comes in, and again, the size. I like this because I was on this last year. K-State obviously has had a shorter receiving room than most. And I think it's nice to have some size options because at the end of the day, that's just one of those traits that if you could have it or not have it, you'd just rather have it if it's not going to cost you one way or the other. And it's good, I think, to have a guy like Bradley, where I don't think the expectation from either party is probably that he's coming in here to command, 40 catches next season. It's about, can you come in and catch about 15 to 20 of the right ones?
Yeah, and I think that the size definitely does play a large part in how this can go for K-State. And somebody posted on the board yesterday, if you're going to throw to a 6'5" guy, why do you not just throw to one of the tight ends? Because you're more than likely, unless you have just a freak tight end, you're not throwing a 50-50 ball to a tight end.
Which, by the way, K-State is getting a freak tight end next year, Drew. I'm not
Yes.
sure if you're aware of that.
Yes, but I don't even think that Lincoln Cura would be ready to just be like, oh, we're going to throw you a 50-50 ball game
Screw you,
one
I'm going
in
up
Ireland.
and getting this.
Yeah, like a receiver 98% of the time is going to be the one that if you're throwing a back shoulder or if you're throwing just a jump ball, they're throwing it to a receiver. That is why you go get somebody with height.
Yeah, a little bit more athleticism in most receivers than tight ends. The way they're built and what they're supposed to do. All right, the final commitment that rolled in for K-State over this stretch that we, again, have owed people a ton of updates about is a man that we've been referring to as Famous Amos. Amos Talalele is from USC. He has 3 years remaining. Obviously, good size there. Just wrapped up his redshirt freshman season with the Trojans. And I think a lot of people were pretty excited about this one. We knew K-State needed offensive line help, but 3 years left, only 2 years in college so far. I mean, how realistic is that this is an instant impact type of guy? Because we talked about Jack Tanner when this process started, who ended up committing to KU. Jack Tanner is more of a project guy. That's a guy that I think at the Big 12 level is not starting 12 games for you next year or playing significant reps. Where does Talalele fall in that category?
I think that he is probably not quite project level because I think that there is a chance that he starts on the interior of the offensive line. But being a younger guy, you just worry about how fast can he come up to speed and everything. But again, kind of like with Powers, Amos Talalele is a guy that USC really wanted to keep. And because of that, it makes it really intriguing. And I know that there's been discourse, and it only seems to happen when K-State loses games, which I've noticed, that the offensive line is too light. That is not a problem here. He was 6'5", 330 on his on-3 profile. I think USC listed him this year at 6'4", 340. So that's a big dude at guard. And for a big guy, he can really, really move, which is really impressive. And I don't know if he's necessarily a shoo-in to start at one of the guard spots because nothing is a guarantee right now. But I think that there is a definite chance where he is a starter at one of the guard positions. Really good run blocking grades on Pro Football Focus. Okay passing grades or pass blocking grades so far. So you'd like him to improve on that more in the offseason. But again, this is a guy that played a decent chunk of snaps at USC as a redshirt freshman offensive lineman. We've talked a long time about offensive linemen just don't see the field that early super often. And when they do, they're usually pretty special. So that kind of probably plays into it a little bit too.
Yeah, and I think you look, it's all about finding balance. These guys can work together. K-State had some guys this year that the run blocking looked better than the pass blocking and everything else. And then we know at the end of the year, the run blocking totally crapped out on K-State. But I think this is another good pickup for them. And I think if you're if you're looking at these, you go, well, I'll just ask you this question: who of these is the most certainty in terms of what production and value they bring to K-State?
Of these last three,
Of these
oh
last
boy.
three, yeah.
Of these last three, I'd say probably Jerand Bradley, because he's just the oldest guy that has played the most. You kind of know what you're going to get with him. But highest ceiling is probably Powers, but Amos is right there.
Yeah, I think to me, it comes across like the way I would view it is I think Bradley, you kind of know what you're going to get there, but I think expectations should probably be kind of held back just a little bit by people. He's not coming in. I don't anticipate him being some game-changing receiver for K-State, but I think he fits a role that K-State kind of needs at that position. I mean, I think your hope would be is that you unlock something with Powers, but the one that I would feel maybe the most confident about would be Amos Talalele, because he's already got some of the playing time, like you said, seeing the field early as a freshman offensive lineman. That's not very common. There's obviously the size, and I think Connor Riley has proven that when he's got the right guys there, he can help develop them, and I think we'll see that there. So I would go that way. Powers is probably the least certainty to me, especially because think of how many linebacker transfers. I mean, for as much as we talk about how great K-State's been in the secondary with transfers, linebacker's been a totally different story where these guys come in and by October you're asking, are they still on the roster? And in some cases they're not. In others, they're there, but they're not going to see the field. So I really like Gabe Powers and what the opportunity is there, but that's the one to me that might be the least certainty. But we'll see how it ends up working out for K-State. And either way, recruiting is so much more about momentum and kind of just casting a wide net and hoping that you catch a couple of big fish. So far, I think with the guys that K-State has brought in, I think there are a couple that you feel like you're going to get production out of no matter what in the way that you anticipated. And then you hope that at least one or two of them really pop in a big way. Certainly, it'd be ideal if all six came in and reached the potential that you think they will. That's just not how anything works, let alone college football. But we'll see how it looks and unfolds as these guys get on campus and get ready for the 2025 football season. Before we get to 2025, though, Drew, we got to go a couple more days and get to a special holiday called Christmas. And I know some people are probably still scrambling out there. And if you are, shame on you. I also have been scrambling today. But fortunately, my wife is just going to have a kid. So I'm not going to have to give her the gift of Ireland this holiday season. But for those of you out there that don't have a good excuse, like, oh, sorry, honey, you can't go to Ireland because you're having a baby. You can secure your tickets now through travel and hospitality packages as the Wildcats kick off the 2025 season in the Aer Lingus College Football Classic in Dublin, Ireland. Visit cats2ireland.com for more information. That's cats, the number 2, Ireland.com. So get on that. Give it to the people in your life that are up to the task of getting on a plane, going to Ireland, and watching Farmageddon next year. It should be an exciting time. And exciting times here at KSO because we are 3 days away from K-State playing a football game against Rutgers to conclude their 2024 season. And also, we will have plenty of content coming your way. DY and I tomorrow previewing K-State Rutgers. And then on Christmas Day, we hope to have a little interview with Marquavius Moss, one of the transfer additions for K-State this season. So that will do it for – oh, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, your Ireland fact. I almost forgot.
Yeah, I got my Ireland fact for today. Yep. Last basketball video did not seem the time or the place. I know my role when it comes to the PR standards of the show. This feels a little bit in higher spirits, so we'll go with an Ireland fun fact. The Titanic was built in Ireland.
That would have been the perfect fact for a K-State basketball show. If you're trying to find an Ireland fun fact, a ship that very famously sunk that seemed unsinkable, you should have used it for the basketball show.
Well, it was built in Belfast, so there you go.
How about that? Shout out Belfast. All right. For Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. Thanks for watching and listening to the KSO Show. Back again tomorrow, previewing the Cats and the Scarlet Knights.